So, some interesting comments made by former X Division champion Rohit Raju when it comes to AEW President Tony Khan and his recent paid advertisements that we see every single week on Impact Wrestling on AXS TV. Now, former Impact Wrestling X Division champion Rohit Raju has been a staple of Impact programming for well over a year now, but he's yet to really interact with any of the AEW talent during the two promotions' ongoing working relationship and crossover on both AEW Dynamite and Impact Wrestling on AXS TV. Now, speaking on the Angle podcast, Raju emphasized how much he loves the crossover but is getting sick of AEW President Tony Khan's paid advertisements. He said, quote, "I think it's really cool. As a kid, I remember wanting to see something like that for the longest time. I'm getting tired of Tony Khan showing up with these paid advertisements. I can cut a promo and obliterate their entire roster with a microphone. I hope something deeper happens where it is a crossover. Seeing Kenny Omega in our ring was fantastic. Then seeing the Good Brothers over there, it's great, man. It really bothers me when fans don't get it, or they don't like it, or they don't realize how awesome it is to be a professional wrestling fan right now. I dreamed of something happening like this. You should be head over heels and wanting more of it. I'll never understand the hate and negativity surrounding companies like that." Now, after failing to regain the X Division Championship at Hard to Kill, and I will touch on those comments because they're very, very interesting. After failing to regain the X Division Championship at Hard to Kill, Rohit Raju has his future sights set on Jake Something. He said, quote, "Honestly though, if a title run or feud or shot isn't in my future at the moment, when he's all said and done with Violent by Design, I would really like to rekindle my feud that I've had with him for years now on the independent scene. I'm going to call out Jake Something right now. When he's said and done with what he's got going on, he can come and find his boy and we can tear it up in Impact." Now, going back to the AEW side of things, as I mentioned, and we've spoken about to the nth degree here on the channel, the AEW and Impact Wrestling crossover has been the talk of the wrestling world since Don Callis announced Kenny Omega would be appearing on Tuesday's Squared Circle broadcast. While Rohit Raju has yet to mix it up with any AEW wrestlers, he does have a list of names he would love to compete with. He said, quote, "I'd love to lock horns with Sonny Kiss. I've put me versus Sting into the universe a million times. I want to be in the ring with Sting as he's one of my favorite wrestlers as a kid. I think when people talk about the greats, they don't mention his name enough. I'd love to go on the microphone against Jericho or MJF, Private Party and me and Shahira, locking horns with those guys. The possibilities are endless." So there's certainly a lot of information there and a lot of interesting quotes there from Rohit Raju. What I think is very interesting, and why I wanted to make a video talking about it today, is that it's kind of reflected of what we certainly, I know I've been saying here on the channel when it comes to these paid advertisements by Tony Khan and Impact Wrestling. And it does kind of look like, and look, before I know people will say, well, it's a work, he's just being a character. I don't know if he necessarily is that much. He might be fanning the flames and might be dipping in and out of kayfabe there, as it was. But I think there's a lot of truth there. Because in that interview, Rohit Raju is very open in that he says that, seeing Kenny Omega appearing on Impact Wrestling and competing in the Impact Wrestling ring is fantastic. Seeing the Good Brothers on AEW Dynamite is great. Seeing Matt Hardy appear once again on Impact Wrestling and seeing Private Party appear on Impact Wrestling too is fantastic. But he's getting a little sick and tired of these AEW paid advertisements by Tony Khan. And obviously, he's used quite strong words there, but I think he's right. If I'm going to be honest, I think he's right. And obviously, I've got a bit of a connection with these paid advertisers because we've broken down nearly every single one here on the channel. But my biggest complaint recently when it comes to these AEW paid advertisements on Impact Wrestling is that they haven't really done anything for the last couple of weeks. They've actually turned into advertisements, which seems so ludicrous. Let's be honest. It seems so ridiculous that AEW would need to advertise on Impact Wrestling. If you're going to compare audiences, on Wednesday nights, AEW Dynamite gets 700, 800, 900,000 live viewers on TNT, whereas Tuesday nights on AXS TV, Impact Wrestling gets 160, 170, 180 live thousand viewers on AXS TV. I mean, it's nothing. I mean, AEW doesn't need that audience. AEW isn't like, we really need those maybe 10,000 viewers that might watch AEW Dynamite that didn't watch it the previous week because we advertised on Impact Wrestling. I would theorize that the majority of the audience that is watching Impact Wrestling on AXS TV on Tuesday nights is probably watching AEW Dynamite on Wednesday nights, or at the very least is very familiar with the product. So those paid advertisements aren't for advertising purposes. They're to continue this AEW and Impact Wrestling working relationship. What is strange now is that for a while, those paid advertisements were great. I really enjoyed them because I felt that it was an extension of the storyline between AEW and Impact Wrestling. It was an extension of Kenny Omega appearing in Impact Wrestling and developing that storyline. But on the side also, you were developing this heel character with Tony Khan in Impact Wrestling. He was playing up that he's the AEW president, but he's a billionaire who was a fan, and he was treating Impact Wrestling like his own personal fantasy league. He was calling himself the Forbidden Door. He was taking credit for all of these AEW stars appearing on Impact Wrestling, and then he would run down Impact Wrestling every single week. And it kind of feels like now that some of the Impact Wrestling stars are getting a little cheesed off, to say the least, by all of these negative comments and all of these slanderous comments by Tony Khan every single week. I think they're kind of looking at it as, it's one thing to have the talent show up, but it's another thing just to put the company down and put the brand down, put the product down every single week. And that's what Tony Khan does on these things. He'll say, oh, Impact doesn't know anything about big cards, and they don't have any good talent, and it's just a fantasy league, and AEW's better than them, and all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting to see that an active Impact Wrestling star is kind of saying, look, what is the use of this at this point? The AEW stars appearing on the broadcast, that's certainly helping, and the people actually appearing in the ring, that's fantastic. But just to have a segment of the show that just has someone just run down the product and say that our product is far superior, I mean, what's the end goal there? That is certainly interesting. And that's certainly a criticism that I've had over the course of the last few weeks, that these paid advertisements haven't really done anything anymore. And it felt like the reason behind them for a while was to develop this Tony Khan character and continue the relationship, but now they just feel there, and they don't really have any purpose to them. Now we do know, and I did a video talking about this the other day, we do know that Tony Khan was present at the latest set of Impact Wrestling TV tapings. Now we don't know at this point whether or not he's actually going to be appearing inside the Impact Zone. He's only done that once before, of course, and arguably that was the best paid advertisement that he'd ever done, is when it looked like it was a normal paid advertisement and all that kind of stuff, and then suddenly the camera pulls back and pans back and reveals that Tony Khan is actually inside the Impact Zone, and he's going to be sitting ringside there later on in the night. And he sits there at ringside during the main event, which was Private Party, with Matt Hardy there, going up against Chris Sabin and James Storm. And he was there with Jerry Lynn, AEW coach and producer, and Jerry Lynn gets involved. He actually prevents Chris Sabin from jumping off the top rope, costs him the match. Private Party get the victory, and they then became the #1 contender for the Impact Tag Team Championships. That was fantastic because it felt like the next step. We'd had all of this bravado and all of this talk and all of these promos, all of these paid advertisements, and then finally we saw Tony Khan actually becoming more of a character on Impact Wrestling television, appearing in the crowd, having his little Star Trek notebook, taking notes and scouting talent and all that kind of stuff, and that was really interesting. And then it kind of stopped. Now, obviously, I understand that the taping schedule for Impact Wrestling is a lot different to AEW, and you kind of have to plan these things out. And Tony Khan, look, he is the president of AEW. He's also the director of football at Fulham. He also is heavily involved with the Jacksonville Jaguars, which his family owns as well. And he's got a plethora of other businesses as well. He represents musical talents. He's got hotels. He's a very busy man, and he can't be spending all of his time at Impact Wrestling TV tapings. I get that. He can't appear at every single one, but I do agree with Rohit Raju that we do need to see something more from it. And look, if Tony Khan can't physically be there, or they don't have any plans to evolve Tony Khan's character in Impact Wrestling, change those segments, change those paid advertisements, have another AEW wrestler there. If you're going to do it where you could do a situation whereby suddenly, I don't know, one AEW wrestler, think of one off the top of your head, I don't know, Jungle Boy. Jungle Boy takes over the paid advertisement for a couple of weeks. This then leads to Jungle Boy appearing in a match in Impact Wrestling, maybe challenging for the X Division Championship or something like that. And then the next paid advertisement is someone else, Britt Baker. Then suddenly she goes, I want to test myself against the knockouts of Impact Wrestling. That leads to Britt Baker having a match in Impact Wrestling. Maybe do it like that. You could cycle talent in and out, introduce them via the paid advertisements, have a match in Impact Wrestling, and then they go back to AEW. I think probably that is one of the larger complaints now, is that, these paid advertisements have been going on since December. We probably need to see a bit more progression now. It was fine initially because of the novelty of having the AEW president just speak and be on camera, which he doesn't tend to do that much when it comes to the world of pro wrestling. I know he's been doing it more and more recently. That was great. That was a novelty. And then we saw the development of Tony Khan as a character, and he was also explaining why Kenny Omega was allowed to appear on the programming, that he could have filed an injunction if he wanted to, all that kind of stuff. That was fine, and that made a lot of sense. But we need a bit more now. We need a bit more progression. So I do agree with Rohit Raju when he's speaking about that. And also I think it's worth considering that if Rohit Raju isn't working, if he isn't working here, if he's not dipping in and out of kayfabe, And he does genuinely have some gripes here when he's saying that he's getting tired of seeing Tony Khan show up with these paid advertisements, cutting a promo and obliterating the entire roster with a microphone, all that kind of stuff. It's interesting to think, is that reflective and is that representative of lots of the Impact Wrestling roster? We have heard a couple of rumors, and I don't want to dive in too much into them because they do seem relatively baseless. But you do have the likes of NWA World Heavyweight Champion Nick Aldis. There was a story, wasn't there, a couple of months ago where he says that he still lives in Nashville, which is where, of course, Impact Wrestling is based and they tape all of their television out of. And whenever talent comes into town to do these Impact Wrestling TV tapings, because of Aldis's history and proximity to the promotion, a lot of people, come to his house, hang out with him, talk to him. And he'd heard rumors that some of the AEW talent or AEW representatives, when they'd been present at these recent Impact Wrestling TV tapings, had a bit of an ego to them, were a bit too big for their britches, if you will. And some of the Impact Wrestling talent had a bit of a problem with that, and they felt a bit disrespected and slighted. If you start to put all of these pieces together, certainly there could be an argument made that maybe some people in the Impact Wrestling roster, while they do appreciate the AEW crossover and the AEW stars appearing at the show, maybe some have a bit of an issue with the ego or the way that some of the AEW talent holds themselves or conducts themselves. And maybe some people have an issue as well, saying, look, we're trying to build up this promotion. We're trying to build up Impact Wrestling. We're trying to get people watching. We're trying to get it trending on social media. We're doing all of this hard work. And then you've got the president of the company just for whether it's 2, 3, 4 minutes in these paid advertisements every single week, just bashing us, which is fine if you can retort somehow. It's fine if you can then have someone respond to him, or it's fine if you're going somewhere, you have a final destination for this storyline, but it doesn't feel like that. It's just Tony Khan's time to bash Impact Wrestling and these paid advertisements every single week. And then you don't have Rohit Raju, or you don't have Chris Bay, Ace Austin, Rich Swann, or whoever go out there and then fire back to AEW. You don't. You have Don Callis appear on AEW Dynamite, but he's there for Kenny Omega. He's not really putting down AEW that much anymore, or Tony Khan. He can talk about being the invisible hand and all that kind of stuff, but the days of him calling Tony Khan, a billionaire fan and someone that's in over their head, he hasn't really done that for a while. That was at the start. That's kind of changed. And the Good Brothers aren't really saying that much as well. They're not putting down AEW for that much. It kind of feels like the insults have suddenly become way more lopsided and way more one-sided. And you could understand the point of view of an Impact Wrestling talent where they're saying, look, no one's responding. No one's responding or retorting. It's just AEW talent just burying Impact Wrestling. And after a while, it's fine if it's part of the storyline and all that kind of stuff, but after a while, these AEW stars and Tony Khan, they have a much bigger platform than Impact Wrestling, and they have a much wider base on social media, and they have a lot of fans that are very dedicated to whatever they say, or whatever they promote. Eventually, fans might start believing it. If the AEW narrative on television every single week is that Impact is this tiny company, and it's not worth watching, and all that kind of stuff, fans might start believing it. And then that suddenly becomes a problem. That becomes a problem for Impact Wrestling. As great as the benefits of this AEW and Impact Wrestling working relationship are, and they've certainly helped out Impact. They're doing great numbers. They've got Kenny Omega appearing in the main event of Hard to Kill and Rebellion. Possibly Kenny Omega is going to become the Impact World Champion. You do have to wonder after a while of, okay, maybe the insults need to stop, because where do you go after that? Or at least have someone that can retort. And I think that's the thing that maybe some of the Impact talent feels right now, is that maybe, as I mentioned, some of these insults are a little bit one-sided, and maybe they just want someone to confront Tony Khan, or they want to have some form of ability to fight back, or, I don't want to say what is Impact getting out of this, because they're getting a lot out of this, but I can understand the point of view of some talents where they're saying, I'm busting my hump trying to make the show great, and then you've got someone who's just insulting it and saying terrible things about the brand and about the company. That can be difficult to take. That can be certainly difficult to take. And maybe they're looking at it going, why can't we do a paid advertisement on AEW Dynamite on TNT every single week? Why can't we have someone put down AEW and then hype up Impact Wrestling? Certainly they could use the promotion in the way that AEW doesn't need to advertise on Impact Wrestling. Impact Wrestling certainly does need to advertise on AEW. They could certainly do with the viewers, because every time there's been significant promotion from AEW's point of view to watch Impact Wrestling, they've done very well in the ratings. I think if you're an AEW, if you're an Impact Wrestling official or an Impact Wrestling executive or an Impact Wrestling talent, you would be saying, look, can we not have a paid advertisement of our own on Dynamite? It's only a couple of minutes, and can we not plug the hell out of Impact? Surely it would really help us out, and you know, you're doing it on Tuesday nights, why can't we do it on Wednesday nights? That kind of stuff. So certainly interesting. I don't know if Rohit Raju's comments are representative of the entirety of the Impact Wrestling roster. We don't even know if he truly means it or not. Well, that's the world of pro wrestling that we live in. It certainly is interesting, and he's not the first person to kind of float those kind of things out there. So I think that's quite significant as well. But of course, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Rohit Raju's comments about being tired of AEW President Tony Khan's paid ads on Impact Wrestling? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, get the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.